we good? You think?
Your meeting.
Yep. All right, here we go. All right, well, welcome. We'll go ahead and start our building committee meeting for this evening, and thanks for coming. There's you should have 3 documents in front of you. The first one will be our agenda that we'll have for this evening. And you'll notice that really there's just one item on there, and it's just the update for LFK. And then the other 2 documents, the ones that's 8.5 by 14 page, that we'll go over that first. That will be what we looked at for value engineering. At our last meeting, we discussed, or it was recommended that we look to be able to find around $600,000 or so within this project and identify that. And we've worked through that. We've worked through that with Lance. We've worked through that with our A&E. And I'm going to walk through each of the 3 columns that we have here. And before I do that, I'll just identify the last page will just be an update on the funding sources that we've identified. And I'll walk through that sheet as well, and then we'll see what type of questions that we have. We have sent off what the contract itself would be. It's a standard contract. We've sent that off to our attorney to just review, and so our attorney will be able to have that back for us at our next meeting, so that if we see that these items here are the way we want to delete or modify and those type of things, then we'll move forward with this plan and then go ahead and work on the contract. The 8.5 by 14 sheet is what I'll start with. On the far left, the cost items. We had mentioned at our last meeting that there were funds available from the Cafeteria Funds that would make it so that we could use that for appliances or installation of those appliances. So looking at what was in the bid items, the bid documents, there with the Cafeteria Funds, that we can use $245,800 from that to help toward this project. Okay, so that's very helpful. Now, that is a funding source. So in the contract itself, that amount actually would be included in the contract. So it's not a savings on the contract as it's written. It's a savings as we have an additional funding source to pay for that. You see what I'm saying? So
they're paying for that.
They're paying for that, exactly. So the contract itself would have the $245,800 in it, but the funding source will be identified as the Cafeteria Fund. Okay. All right. So change of scope items. So these are things that we would be changing. We wouldn't be eliminating these things, but these are things that we identified that we could change that could be cost effective and that would not deteriorate from the project itself, the renovation. Now, I will have to admit, as I go through these, Mr. Levacy, he's not here today. He's on vacation, so I'm very happy for him. And he knows these things much stronger than I, but I'll do my very best to go through and explain what some of these things are. The very first one, $10,000 savings, is we would delete the fluid applied for the air barrier at the main entrance into the office. In other words, instead of blowing in some of that stuff into the walls, we would do a wrap. It's just a wrap, okay? But that's at a cost savings of $10,000. The roof itself was put in as a 90 mil, and I always kind of refer to it as a gauge. And it had a 30-year warranty. A standard roof is like a 60 mil. That's what we're putting on currently at Blue Ridge Tech Center. Blue Ridge Tech Center
is 60 mil?
Is 60 mil. And it comes with a 20-year warranty. Mr. Levacy had asked to look at what is called a 60 TPO. It's an adhered membrane roof. It still has a 20-year warranty, and it has a standard insulation. So what does that mean, like in layman's terms? All right, so this is it's a solid membrane that goes down over the roof. It's adhered all together rather than mechanically put in parts. we all know that, like, anytime that we are dealing with water, rain, those type of things, the less seams, the better. It's like a sunroof. My dad always said in my car, don't get a sunroof because it eventually will leak. I don't know. I never knew because I followed my dad's advice. Okay, so I don't know, but I never had a sunroof, but I never had a leak. So the material, this is actually, it's a white roofing cover rather than a black roof cover. Mr. Levesey had said that he had put 2 of these down prior to leaving, and Falkier, he liked them very well. He also liked, because of the color itself, that it deflected some of the sunlight and the heat and so forth that helped underneath in the building. So that was quite of a cost savings. 3 is just working on some of the doors. Instead of having a solid finish door or just a door with a solid finish itself, looking more at like a maple wood door with a veneer birch door, like almost like a collarine, like you'd see the brown doors that you see on all your schools, like Warren County Middle School. When you walk through there, you see it's just it's a veneer covering over the door. Now, it's not a lot of savings. I called back again today in regards to this, but once you start adding up a few dollars here and there, $5,000 can be helpful.
Are these wooden doors, or are these fiberglass or steel doors?
I believe these are wood doors.
So
they're wood doors with veneer finish.
are they hollow?
No, they're solid doors.
Okay, because I'm thinking of something, if God forbid, that
Sure.
somebody could kick through it very easily. Solid, okay.
Number 4, the electrical light fixtures, all the fixtures themselves would be the same. We were just able here to look at going with a different manufacturer of those particular lights, and through that change, we were able to save $16,000, a little bit over $16,000. Number 5, electrical service here from the existing transformer. So we would reuse 4 of the conduit, the pipes, okay? And we would remove the aluminum cable and install new copper cable through the pipes. And I'm being told that's better. But I do know that there's a tremendous amount of savings there by looking at some of the things that we already have that's already in good shape. Okay. Number six is the modification of the cafeteria and the stage. From our last meeting, we discussed why would we tear something down to build something new. So what we would do here is, because we actually have 2 stages within the school, and that we would take that stage in the cafeteria and we would turn that into a storage area. We would remove those steps from the front, and instead of tearing something down and then rebuilding a new one somewhere else, we would have that one serve as that purpose. So that was helpful in the savings. Number 7, these are the in each of the pods, in each of those classrooms, there is like I'll call it a lobby area. They call it a collaborative area, and those type of things. And in that area, they were going to have these very large boards, almost like ride-on type boards and those type of things. What we did instead was that we still would include those wall covering type boards, but they would be 8x4 rather than just the entire wall. Yeah, very similar to that. Yeah, maybe that's a little bit longer than 8 feet, but in length. But yes, and that we would just modify that board rather than the whole wall itself being a board. So that was a savings there, and we still actually can have that type of. We can still have that board there, just a little bit of a smaller version. Now, items that we deleted over on the right-hand side, the final cleaning. We have, when the construction company and so forth, when they leave the site, they're going to do their cleaning. Since this is going to be done in pods, we're going to have a couple pods open. We're going to do those. Then they're going to take all their stuff out. We're going to come in and do the cleaning as we normally would anyway. We did this at AS Roads. At least that's what I've been told. We've done this before, so we did this at AS Roads. Mr. Levacy said this would not be any of additional burden because we're going to clean it regardless. And then number 2, we were going to inside like mechanical rooms, storage rooms, and those type of things. And I spoke with Mr. Levacy late last week on this. Is that this is like in those rooms they were going to put like a sealant or those are like a stain or a sealant and so forth down on the floors, and he didn't really feel like that was necessary to do. We still would have the same room, we still would have everything, which is not necessarily needed. And number 3, it deals with the custodial rooms that they were going to put in different type of high splash areas around the sinks and those type of things. Currently, those areas are blocked anyway, so he didn't feel like putting splash boards in and those type of things in that area with the rooms already being blocked would make a bit of too much of a difference. The stage curtain, that's one that we talked about. I do not know, Mr. Levacy, maybe Mr. Helmick may know the condition of that particular curtain, but that is an item that we had looked at. Number 5, all right, let's go back to those collaborative areas together. And we talked about where the boards were there previously on one. Now what they had here was built into the wall in those collaborative areas were benches, like a bench built into the wall. And so Mr. Levacy felt like that, you know, it would be nice, but it's not necessarily a necessity, that we could, through our own budgets, if need be, we could put something freestanding or some type of bench or some type of project, even with possibly with like one of our trades classes, or perhaps like with some of our technology type classes that we would have within our school to be able to do something similar to that. And most likely around the division, we probably have some of these benches anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's another thing that maybe PTAs, PTOs, whichever they go by now.
They go by both.
Could do as I know they, unless it's changed, they always did fundraisers to benefit the school in some way, playground equipment or something.
Sure. Then number 6, in the kitchen area, and we discussed this last time, that the kitchen area, after our meeting here, even before, we had tours, and then afterwards we went back over, and we also talked with Ms. Kinsey in food service, and we all agreed the floor is in great shape.
Yeah.
So that was sort of a nice one to have there. Number 7, the tack boards in classrooms. These are kind of like little tack board, bulletin board type things, and those, we already have some of those type of things there. We probably try to use some of those that we do have. And this is something that Mr. Levacy felt like even through his own budget to be able to supply some of these classrooms with some of these tack boards. They're just like the old bulletin board type stuff. Okay. Number 8, the roller window shades. We have window shades, but this is an item that we had that's almost an $18,000 item. The building itself, as far as its design, it doesn't really have a tremendous amount of windows, and those themselves are not really large windows per se. When you go up to AS Roads and you visualize being in front of that school, they have very large windows. It's like really just windows through that whole very front part. It's beautiful. And those type of things. But LFK, this design, because we're not necessarily tearing out walls and putting in the big windows, we're working with what we have here, that there are not a large amount of windows there, and they're not very large windows. So that was another one that they suggested. Number 9, these are, all right, let's go back to those collaborative zones again. Inside those collaborative zones, they may have like, this may be This area here may be the Jaguars area, or it may be like some type of name for that collaborative zone or those type of things. Yes, it'd be great to spell it in gold, but most likely you could probably spell it in a different way. And maybe even the kids and those type of things could have projects where they create something that's kind of theirs. So that's one that we looked at. It's a lot of money in real life, but to a project this size, it's only around $5,000. But when you add that $5,000 to earlier when I said it's not a lot of money at $5,000, now you're at $10,000. So that has a significance to it. The metal shelving as presented on the drawings. I spoke with Mr. Levesey this morning, and that on that he said these are like in the custodial closets, and he says we have shelving. And in-house, we can do it at a much cheaper amount than what this is. So, and now storage and space and all those things is when you're building something like this, you just know it's your own house. You feel like at the very end, I didn't have enough, you feel like you never have enough storage and those type of things. That's just because you load up with stuff, okay? So you get excited about having something new, so you go out and buy a lot of new stuff and then realize that you needed more space. But somehow you survived in your old house. So I think here with these shelves that we currently have there and things that we can do in-house, I think we can survive without actually refitting those. The last one I sort of want to explain a little bit because I wasn't as familiar with this one going in. This was presented that there would be the builder's risk insurance that the contractor and so forth would have. I asked Mr. Ballantyne, and I asked Mr. Ballantyne in the past, he has a lot of history with some of these type of things. Had we went through our insurance company in the past to do some of these, the builder's risk insurance, and he said that we had. I'm not sure on which particular project, so we called our insurance carrier and asked how much would this policy be per year. And the policy that we would be able to get per year that would match this is roughly a little bit over $5,000 a year, okay, for that project. Now, Lance, as far as in their bid documents and so forth, had that at $20,000. So this is roughly like about an 18-month type project. So if it's like $5,000 for 12, it's about 25 for the other half of that. So it's about 75. I went ahead and just rounded it up and said we'll save $10,000 there, just in case. So yes, sir.
What is builder's risk insurance?
That's a. I would. Can you help me with that?
It's a type, and I just found out, but it's just a type of insurance to cover
things that are on the ground and
damages outside of the building, materials, that type of stuff.
Okay.
Would it cover?
Fires, theft.
Outside, but once it's in the building, it's locked up.
Those type of things.
Okay.
Would it cover, I don't think anybody's close enough it should, but say something blew over and somebody else's next door?
Yeah, that, I would.
Well, I would think that would be in the policy.
If not, our liability, our liability in general.
One policy or the other would handle
right,
that.
One would probably supersede the other, but at least one, our liability in general would cover that because in general, if something came off of our sites, I mean, just something at the school, whatever it may be.
If it was contractor stuff, the contractor probably has insurance for that too. So
yeah, he should provide you a certificate of insurance.
Yes, and they
as a liability coverage.
And yes, and that was part of, you're right, and that was part of the RFP, and they have done that. They have done that. So if I look now at just figures at the bottom, okay, the cost item of the cafeteria at $245,800, and then the scope items, things that we would keep, but yet we would modify, $252,900, and then the deleted items, $116,300. Now you're going to see out to the side that combined, that's $615,000 Okay, 615,000. But just know that the cafeteria part is it's a source of funding, but it still reaches that 615.
But
Okay.
it's still coming out of total project cost because we're not, the county and our school board is not having to pay it.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I mean, as long as it's explained that way, that's fine.
Sure.
All right, I got one other question on number 2 of deletion items. The dust from a concrete floor in a lot of switch rooms, like for the telephone company back in the day, we used to have to treat those floors so that it wouldn't suck dust up into that. So you might want to ask Greg if that's the same situation there.
Okay, I will.
I mean, I don't know, but a concrete floor will generate dust. So you got a fan pulling to cool something down in that room, it'll suck the dust right off the floor.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if the rooms are not that small, and the other reason I asked is because I'm worried about being late. I was at Lowe's, and the guy in front of me in line had cement sealer, gallon thing of it. So if the rooms are not that big, we could probably seal those.
Sure.
Yeah.
The best sealer you can get is what we use when we stamp concrete, is about $130 for a 5-gallon bucket. And it'll go a long way. So yeah, that could be an after item. And that's the best sealer you can get. You can buy cheaper sealers too. So,
Our guys can definitely do that
Yeah.
in-house.
And it's not tremendous amount of space.
It's not.
It's
no,
not.
you
it's
can
not
put it
really
on with a
tremendous
roller.
amount.
It's no big deal.
And these are mainly mechanical rooms.
Right.
They're not actually data closets.
Okay.
All right. The last there is just identification of our funding, identification of costs. This is similar. I just want to note just 1 or 2 changes that I have on here. We'll start on that left-hand middle left, identifying the funding. The 10 million there is from the grants which you've identified, and I know the county had appropriated the 2.2 funding toward the project. We're looking at the 2021 carry a surplus. The 2022, obviously, there's an audit as part of and I think we're to be told those funds, and perhaps you guys can tell me January or
think so.
yeah, that's
I think
the
so.
carryover from this year. The Cafeteria Fund is what we identified that they would be able to pay. I put the Cfp funds in here with the county. Let me reference this. We have $1 million in account that we use, $343,000 for the roof at Blue Ridge Tech. So there should be $657,000 left in that account. We're looking at taking $357,000 of that and to start on the A&E and those type of things for E. Wilson Morrison. So we just identified $300,000 that would be left of that $1 million that could be used toward this project. It's the funding it's already there. And then if we identify the cost, the contingency fund, you'll see that the number had changed from 5% to 4%. And I changed it from 5% is like a standard. It's like it's a good idea. It's those type of things. For a renovation, I've checked with Mr. Levacy, obviously, and checked with others, and there really shouldn't be a whole lot of surprises behind pod walls and in that building in general. We're not really tearing a lot of things out. So
you're not going to hit rock if you had,
right.
There's no footings in this job, so
Right,
you're not going to hit any rock.
So I just put it down to 4%. Now, is that really a savings? Well, you just don't know. We'll know at the end if it's a savings, but I just said, okay, for the benefit of it.
So if there is a savings at the end, that could be transferred over to E. Wilson, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Cabling and technology, I still just left that in as a placeholder. The A&E for the LFK and the Blue Ridge Tech for the HVAC and the third-party review is the same as we've had So if I identify the cost outside of the actual contract or the project itself versus the funds that are identified, the difference between those two is $12,993,660. So at our last meeting, we looked at the bid that came back with the ad alternatives. It's $13,005,600. And if you were to subtract the 615, I'm sorry, from that, then that would get us down to about 12,390,600. So from our last meeting, it was asked that we see what we can do to get that 600,000. So that's what we were able to come up with without it being, impactful in a negative way. And that.
So we're funded fully at this point now?
Yeah, as long as the surplus from the 2022, as long as that comes in, and we're able to use that for this project.
Okay. And the cabling comes in?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'll update you as soon as the cabling comes in and those type of things. I'll update you with that.
All right. That's a nice presentation, Buck.
And thank you.
That's good news.
So.
Out there.
Yeah.
Let's have a win.
We got there.
So at our next board meeting for our school board members and those type of things, are you comfortable? In other words, are you okay with this particular list? Because if so, this is what I'm going to move forward with to be able to start with the contract for our next school board meeting on October the 5th, whenever it is, October 5th.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't object to any of these on the
Okay.
list.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much.